Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm pretty sure everyone listening just got their ears blown out by me screaming into the microphone.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
It's totally worth it. It's Tuesday, March 26th, 2019. You know what that means?
What does it mean?
Almost April, which is the NFL draft, but it also means that we are inching slowly, ever so slowly, towards the start of the 2019 season.
You think it's slow now? Wait till about May.
Yeah, it'll be bad. At least we get to watch baseball.
I can't wait for watching 6 straight months of baseball.
Yeah, we're doing a fantasy baseball league, so it should be interesting. Maybe it'll be entertaining.
It probably won't be, though.
Probably won't be that entertaining. We have a great show prepared for you today. We're back at it in the series called All That Glitters. We took a little break to talk about free agent signings last week. We're going to break down the top 10 to 15 finishers from the running back position and discuss if they truly were good or just a flash in the pan. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram and like us on Facebook. Twitter, at the FF Champs. Instagram, at the Fantasy Champions. And you can go to facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions to like us or follow us on any of those platforms. Subscribe wherever you listen. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and an assortment of podcast directories. Go find us somewhere.
Yeah.
Leave a review wherever you listen and share this podcast with your friends because we have no money and we rely on your support.
That's true.
That's
what I told my mom last night. But
That's what I told my mom last night. So let's move on to our news segment. Let's get started with some news around the NFL. Rob Gronkowski retired from the NFL this Sunday.
Hold on, I need a second.
Devastating.
I think I'm going to tear up.
This is not only bad news for the New England Patriots. This is bad news for the whole league.
Yeah.
That's some entertainment right there.
It's bad news for anyone who likes 69 jokes.
Yeah. Oh my God! Apparently, he has some kind of agreement to act in movies. I was hoping he would go play in the WWE.
That'd be
that would be way more fun.
But that takes a strain on his body. I think he's had enough of that.
I don't care.
Oh well, yeah. Oh, of course, I don't care, and you don't care.
The ladies would love it.
Oh yeah.
Gronk's agent does not rule out his return to the NFL.
Yeah, he could pull off a Jason Witten, maybe.
You know what's funny? A couple weeks ago, I was watching the glorified NFL Network, and Willie McGinnis, one of my favorite linebackers of all time, talk about the Rob Gronkowski scenario. He gave it a different spin, and people have probably heard this already, but Rob Gronkowski, he said that he may retire or not play half the season. Willie McGinnis said this. I don't know if it's informed or not, but not play half the season, then come back midway through the season just to preserve his body and go for a playoff run. Not sure if that's this whole scenario, but Gronk just nonchalantly dropped an Instagram post and retired from the NFL, so there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw something from his agent saying, like, if Brady called him, and, like, he'd be like, yo, could you come back? He'd be like, yeah, dude. Hold on, let me chug this beer. Oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah, Gronk's a special guy.
Gonna miss him, though.
Yeah, definitely
Big
gonna miss him. Fantasy implications. A lot of people are like, oh, what's the fantasy impact if Rob Gronkowski retiring? Well, absolutely nothing, considering he was ranked like 15th. So if you were drafting Rob, Rob Gronkowski just single-handedly saved a lot of fantasy people's seasons because there are going to be idiots that drafted him in the 5th round, 6th round because it's Gronk.
Yeah. So it's Gronk. Takes him in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
It's like, all right.
Takes him out of Kelsey.
Yeah. I like Gronk more than Kelsey, so I'm going to draft him higher.
Yeah, you just saved a lot of fantasy seasons, Gronk. That's the only implications that happen there, the salvation of fantasy seasons.
Considering he killed a lot of them last year.
Yeah. Jared, hey, if you had Gronk, you went down with the ship.
That's true.
So, I had Gronk.
I did too at a point. It's okay.
I gave you Kelsey for Gronk, so that was stupid.
Yeah, you did do that, didn't
Forgive me, fantasy, for ruining you. Jared Cook officially signed with the New Orleans Saints. He was rumored to be talking to the Patriots because he agreed to a deal in the tampering period and didn't actually sign it because he wasn't sure if he was going to retire or not. Guess this means he's not retiring. But he's officially signed with the Saints. What are the fantasy implications of that? I know you have opinions. I personally think he's gonna probably be significantly better than he was under Derek Carr. In the past, Drew Brees has loved to throw to tight ends, but your unique take has given me some hesitation.
Well, I
I
was just telling you this. I actually think he is worse with the Saints than he is the Raiders, just for the simple fact that there's a lot of weapons on that team, and they are not going to be throwing the ball a lot this year. I think with Drew Brees' age, I think they're slowly going towards the running game. And yeah, they're really just not going to be throwing the ball as much. And you have Michael Thomas, you have Alvin Kamara. Like, there's a lot of weapons on that team there's already almost too many weapons that you could say.
Yeah.
That are going to be wanting the ball. I don't know how many.
Jared Cook's a weapon, but
yeah. I mean, and I know Drew Brees does like throwing to tight ends, and they will use him. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't know fantasy-wise if he's going to get enough targets.
Yeah.
And like even in the red zone. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I don't know. I'd be hesitant with Jared Cook with the Saints.
I think the thing with Derek Cook. The thing with Jared Cook for me is that when you look at what Drew Brees and Sean Payton have done in their offenses, they like to throw to tight ends, and I think you could see that in the offense. The only thing that concerns me is that Drew Brees is on the older side. He's 41. I don't think they're going to throw it. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to throw it all that much next year. It'll probably still be like a 60-40. Probably split, but it's just not going to be something that's going to get
with
Jared
Mark
Cook
Ingram
huge
gone,
numbers.
do you think maybe they might throw it more? But
no.
Latavius Murray's going to get 10 carries
Here
again?
we go, Latavius Murray in the red zone. Yeah, no.
Gosh.
So for the first time in many years, usually the team that wins the Super Bowl plays on opening weekend, which Patriots fans are pissed off about. Don't understand that. But the Patriots will not be playing the opening Sunday or opening Thursday night against whoever they scheduled. The Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears will be playing.
Yep.
It is the 100th football season, not of just the NFL. Of, I guess everything. I don't know. Because the Super Bowl's only 50 seasons old. I have no idea what this is about. But anyway, so to showcase the oldest rivalry in the game, they want to have Green Bay and Chicago open on Thursday Night Football. Actually, this is a good game. I'll watch it. I was thinking 5 years ago, I was like, gross, but
I don't have a problem with it at all.
yeah.
Would you rather have actually, I don't know. I was going to say Steelers Packers, but I don't think because you would have to have the AFC North playing the NFC North, and I don't know if that's...
Yeah, no, that's probably not a good idea.
Right.
But they're that is a little bit change of pace, different direction. The Thursday first game of the season, Green Bay, Chicago. In the final piece of news that we have this week, Randall Cobb signed with the Dallas Cowboys.
At first, I was
How much worthless is this?
I was like, no, at first I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then I thought about it. I'm like, okay, well, Randall Cobb kind of
blows.
Yeah, he kind of blows.
He wasn't good with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback.
And
what makes you think that
is he really,
Dak Prescott's going to make him good?
He's essentially just Cole Beasley, who they lost to the Bills.
True. Well, replacing guys that you had.
Yeah, so I mean,
guess so.
They're about going to be the exact same team as they were last year.
Yep. Exactly the same team. As far as Randall Cobb, people are gonna draft. They're gonna put him on their fantasy teams.
Oh gosh.
He wasn't last year, so I don't know. Dak Prescott's offense is not really prolific. You know what I mean? So Randall Cobb signing with the Cowboys means absolutely nothing. Let's move into our main segment.
Let's go. All that glitters.
We're already 3 weeks into all that glitters. Next week is the last week.
Oh, wow.
And we will talk about tight ends. But for this week, we will discuss the top finishing running backs. All stats are based on half PPR in case you guys get sweaty. All right? Well, I'm in a standard league. You can't do this to me.
Actually, in my PPR league, I actually have Todd Gurley ahead of Saquon Barkley because he has more catches per game. But
yeah, okay.
Take a lead. So we go half PPR. We discuss the realities of running back finishes in 2018, and our goal is to help you look at last year and dissect last year's numbers and tell you if these people will continue producing next year. So let's get to it. The first guy, Number one, 342.6 fantasy points. He had a stretch of games where he was averaging 28 fantasy points a game. Todd Gurley scoring more fantasy points than Andrew Luck.
Your guy. That is actually extremely impressive.
Todd Gurley
Think about that for a
my
second.
guy.
Think about what you just said.
Yeah.
He
I
scored
hope that's not wrong and I'm not shooting in the dark.
I can actually double check that for you.
It probably is true, but the averages for this guy are freaking insane. He averaged 24.5 fantasy points per game.
That is unheard of for a running back. That's absolutely insane.
It really is.
That's why we say running backs win you championship leagues.
That's true. What I find so interesting about Todd Gurley, he did finish as a consistency rank of 4. One game he finished with 10 points. Another game he faced the Bears D, which, hey, why not? 7 fantasy points. So 10 and 7 were the 2 games. He busted 14% of his games. A bust for running backs. To preface this is under 12 fantasy points. But when you look at the numbers of this guy from, last year even to this year,
he did, by the way, have more points.
He did have more points.
Yep.
When you look at what Todd Gurley did this year, it is crazy to me that Todd Gurley is dropping down draft boards.
When people, the only concern, because people saw what he did in the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship and go,
yeah,
well, he's on the same running back. C.J. Anderson's getting more carries. That's not going to happen in the regular season.
No.
The only legitimate concern is the arthritis in his knee. And if that is cleared up by training camp and for your draft, and he's going right now, like number 5, number 5-ish, I think, is a lot of like mock drafts right now. You take him. You take Todd Gurley at number 5. Yeah. That is a steal.
If he's sitting that seat, for me, I don't want to be the guy that drafts Todd Gurley and then at the end of the season is like, I drafted Todd Gurley. What the frick? like the people who drafted David Johnson this past year.
Oh yeah,
don't want to be that guy. But I just don't like. We talked about this before. Todd Gurley is the type of player that, if you were to say, Todd Gurley's going to take a step back, how much is a step back? 3? Finishing 3rd in the league? That's not a step back.
Right.
And had he played 2 more games, everyone's like, in half PPR. Saquon Barkley scored 340 fantasy points. It was only 2 points behind. It's only 2 points behind Todd Gurley. If Todd Gurley played the last 2 games and played to his averages, he would have finished with 360, 370 fantasy points.
Yeah.
That is freaking insane. So if you're telling me and you're freaking out about Todd Gurley, oh my gosh, Todd Gurley.
People forget how good.
His knee, it has arthritis in it. You don't forget how good Todd Gurley is. I think when people go from season to season, they forget because of the 9 months that you don't think
about
football.
Which includes me. I forget all the time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you get all the way to the next year. You forget these little things of how good was Todd Gurley actually? And you go to the thing that you most remember. Well, what do we most remember? The fact that he played 4 snaps in the NFC Championship game, and he busted in the Super Bowl, and he choked out in the Super Bowl. And so it's has Todd Gurley always been a player to show up in the playoffs? No. I'm sorry, no.
Oh, but you know what's pretty good, Morgan?
What?
Is typically fantasy football does not include the NFL postseason.
Yeah, wow. Isn't that amazing? So I'm drafting Todd Gurley. I'm sorry. He is going to be as good as, maybe not as good as he was this year.
I was going to ask you, so let's say everything is cleared up, Todd Gurley's fine. Like you learn this by training camp and blah, blah, blah. And people start taking him number 1. Again, do you take him number 1?
No. I have him 2 or maybe 3.
Okay.
And the only reason why is because I really do like Saquon Barkley. I think I would. It's always been at the end of the season. It has always been a 2-way tie between him and Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley and Todd Gurley. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at those two, I do think that Saquon Barkley will probably have the edge over Todd Gurley, especially if the arthritis has a problem in his knee. But I just don't see Todd Gurley becoming a huge, everyone's concerned about injury risk. And I'm like, well, he's had to miss a few games over the last couple years. But Todd Gurley's never really had to miss long stretches of time. And even the arthritis in his knee, he tried to play through it in the playoffs. So if you're concerned about Todd Gurley not being on the field for your fantasy team, that is not a concern for me. It's just can he continue to produce at the level that he has been year in and year out? You look at this past year, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the year before that. He's had 2 straight years of being really good. It's how long can he keep it up? And that's where my concern comes in for Todd Gurley, which is why I would not rank. Like, if you want the guy, you number one, your pick 1.01, and you're sitting there and you're trying to pick a guy, I'm taking Saquon Barkley. I know what I'm getting. If I draft Todd Gurley and he flakes out on me this next year like he did in the playoffs, then I'm sitting there going, oh, frick. And then I'm trying to figure out what to do with Todd Gurley. So that's kind of where I am with Gurley. I do like him. Don't force me to take you, Todd Gurley, at pick number 6 because
yeah.
I have plans, all right?
If he's still sitting at 6 though, and your draft's in like August, there's probably a reason why.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably something going on with this
I'm
team.
curious to see. He'll probably play a few snaps in the preseason. Hate to reference our favorite time of year, but I need to see him just do something efficient. Because it's a.
You want to see him move, like
I want to see him move.
September.
We got to move on, but it's a lingering, thought in my mind. You know, the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl are just sitting there in my head. Like, why was he not on the field for those games? Was it because he was written out of the game plan?
The arthritis in his knee.
Why would you write your best player out of a game plan? I don't. The arthritis in his knee is probably.
But if it was that bad, why even play him? Sort of thing.
And I think the people who are really concerned is that 3 weeks earlier, before the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game, he played the Dallas Cowboys in the first round of the playoffs, and he had 120 yards and a touchdown.
So if it was the arthritis in his knee,
I just don't know
like
he disappeared in the playoffs. He does not. He hasn't proven to me that he's disappearing in the regular season. But anyway, let's move on to the counterpart that we were just discussing, Saquon Barkley. 340.3 fantasy points. I was so wrong about Mr. Barkley. Very talented individual. His consistency rank was number 1. He busted in only 6% of his games, which was, I think, just
one game. Yep.
He averaged 21.3 fantasy points per game. He was incredible, consistent at home and on the road. I freaking love Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, he's a baller.
He really is.
Now, you know Saquon Barkley's my guy.
Yeah.
And last season, number 1 consistency rank is big. He had one game where he busted, which is absolutely fantastic. I will put a little pause.
Yeah, I know.
Just a little bit pause.
I feel the same thing.
The height for him, for the expectations, is very high for this upcoming season.
Right.
That offense has not changed. Their offensive line still stinks. Eli Manning.
They added one more offensive lineman, I believe.
Is he any good?
I don't remember.
I don't remember it being like.
I didn't come prepared with the offensive line for the New York Giants.
What? But overall, it's still pretty much the same team.
Yeah.
They replaced Odell with Golden Tate. You think the passing attack's going to improve? Yeah. Eli Manning's a year older. I don't know, man. I love Saquon still, and they're still going to use him too.
He's the piece. Like they're going to use him a lot, and I think
I'm just hesitant to say he's the number 1 guy
to the point of
just yet
what you're making. The point you're making, and I hate that we were complete opposite ends of the spectrum 4 months ago. So
yeah,
I'm the Barkley truther, and you're not, I guess.
I know we did a complete switch.
But anyway, so Saquon Barkley. To your point, he's going to be used a lot. And
he is.
Nothing this year proved to me that he can't handle whatever it is.
100%.
So if they're going to use him even without Odell, I'm curious. I wish I had wrote this down. But what was his numbers without Odell? That's kind of, I'm curious to know that. But I think Barkley will probably, my concern, and this
Did Odell miss the last few weeks of the season?
Yeah, something like that. My concern was it good?
He had a few good games.
Yeah.
But his one bust game came in week 15. He had 31 yards rushing.
Yeah. Who did he play?
The Tennessee Titans.
Oh, Saquon, what are you doing? Why do you do me like that?
It's interesting. I just think it's the whole. I love Barkley, It's just the whole offense is gonna suck. The whole team is gonna suck, I think.
Yeah.
It's just, how much can you rely on one player if your team blows that much?
My concern with Saquon Barkley is not necessarily the same as yours. And I've talked to you about this before. This is a completely unstatistical concern or I don't even know, like a reality concern.
It's just a hunch.
It's just a hunch I have. Is that some running backs, i.e. Todd Gurley, finish in their rookie years as very high, really high, and then their second year they kind of have a little bit of a hangover, and then they go into their third year and they're really good. Ezekiel Elliott did not have that problem. Mm-hmm. He was one of the first running backs off the board, top 10 pick. Zeke was a beast. Saquon Barkley is that same talent, right? And he's on a team where the offensive line blows and the offense blows, and he actually performed to be the second best half PPR running back by 2.3 fantasy points. So for me, he's as much of a sure thing as you can get, but it's almost like I hate to put a buyer beware on him, because it's like, if he does bust out this year, I think because he's the guy in the offense.
I think you can. I said I was hesitant on taking him number one just because I am scared of the Giants' offense. However, I think you are, even if he does kind of struggle, he's still, like, I think he will produce.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't worry too much about taking him very high, because even if he does struggle, I think he'll still be a very talented, just by the usage rate alone.
Him and Todd Gurley are like definitely
and his talent.
My 1 and 2. I have this odd feeling that Todd Gurley or Saquon Barkley is gonna bust. One of them's gonna bust this year, and we're all gonna be sitting. And I don't want pick 1, and I don't want pick 2, and I'll stay away from those guys. Like, I feel better. And I hate to say this, and people are gonna be like, "You're an idiot," but I feel better about drafting Ezekiel Elliott than I do about drafting one of those two guys for some reason.
Yeah,
it's just a hunch.
I get what you mean, just because you know what you're gonna get out of Elliott. Now, I'm not saying you don't know what you're going to get out of Barkley.
And he burned me last year, Elliott. You burned me. He still finished 3, but it's not what I wanted.
Yeah. And then Gurley, though, you're just like, the arthritis in his knee. And then with Barkley, it's like, he was awesome last year, but like...
Usually you want to trend away from guys with a lot of questions around them. And you want to, like, with Todd Gurley, they lost an offensive lineman, the Los Angeles Rams, and there's arthritis in Todd Gurley's knee, and he's going on his third year of trying to be one of the best running backs in football, and it's like you look at all of that together, and that just, to me, that doesn't spell success for Todd Gurley. Now,
however, on the flip side, it's Todd Gurley.
However, on the flip side, it's Todd Gurley, and that offensive line only lost one piece, so it's like, that whole team that whole offense could still run through Todd Gurley.
There's also a good chance that what we're saying is like
a complete nonsense. And
and it's Barkley and Gurley.
Yeah,
because they are the two most talented. Like, but I get what you mean with the question marks. So, like with McCaffery, Kamara, Elliott, there's more of like what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
they're going to be RB1s. They're gonna produce. Not saying Barkley and Gurley won't be RB1s, but there's more of like arthritis in his knee.
Yeah,
Barkley's team sucks.
Right.
Like there's like. It's his first year. Can he do it again? You know what I mean?
Yeah, the questions surrounding them are really a concern. We got to move on. Number 3, Christian McCaffrey.
Also my boy.
Carolina. Yeah.
He's been my boy since day one.
RB1 and RB2 on this kid's team.
Yeah.
332 fantasy points. He was 7th on the consistency ranks, and he busted 25% of the time. We talked about this before the show. That was more due to the fact that early in the season they didn't use him the same way they did in the second half.
They kind of flipped the switch with him a little bit.
They kind of flipped the switch with him.
Didn't they cut C.J. Anderson too?
Yeah, I don't know if they had C.J. Anderson, did they?
They did.
Oh, okay.
So starting in, I think, week 8, McCaffrey just like became arguably the best running back in fan from week 8 on.
Yeah.
He just
he was a beast.
He took another step and kind of surprised a lot of people too. Because I know, like, a lot of people, even someone like myself, who I love McCaffrey, I didn't see that coming.
No.
Like, he kind of flipped the switch.
When we got to the midway point in the season, I was kind of like the question arose in my head of, who every year there's one guy that's a league winner. He's like Todd Gurley 2 years ago, 2017. He was a league winner. He was a guy that you got to Week 16 in your championship, and you got 32 points from Todd Gurley. He's the reason why you got there. He's the reason why you won your fantasy championship. Right. Christian McCaffrey was that for you this past year. He didn't do anything Week 16 that was special, but he carried your team when he needed to get to the fantasy championship, and so he was that guy from Week 8 on, and I think that was the consensus at Week 9 or 10 that guy would be the bust-out guy. I do have my concerns. He's small. He can't be used in the same capacity that he was used last year on a consistent basis. And I don't know, for some reason there's this part of me, and I'm holding on to it, that I just have so many, like, can Christian McCaffrey go on a touchdown run like he did in the second half of the year this year?
That and the thing that he's small are my only two concerns about McCaffrey.
Because he was, last year, it took him halfway through the season to score his first couple touchdowns. And once he did, it was great. He broke through that. He broke through the wall. But, like, to me, I look at McCaffrey and are people really ranking him 3 and 4? Like,
yes.
That's where I'm like. But my thing is that I don't want that type of running back. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but that type of running back as my number one. Like, if I'm drafting a running back, I want Kamara, I want Todd Gurley, I want Saquon Barkley,
I think what you're
Zeke, I want Melvin Gordon. I don't want Christian McCaffrey.
In your head, you kind of have this image, I feel like, McCaffrey of a guy who's not going to get like 20 carries a game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I get what you're saying. You don't want a guy like that.
Yeah.
Who's more of like, I don't want to say he's pass first.
He's more
than rush second, but he sort of is. And I get what you mean where you don't want that kind of guy as your RB1, taking third or fourth overall.
Because when Cam Newton goes out, or when they decide to run the football on a majority basis, right? It's not going to, in the short term, it's okay. But in the long, what if Cam Newton blows out his knee in Week 4 next year? Is it going to be good long term for Christian McCaffrey to be running the ball every single down?
Long term, maybe not. For this current season, though, yeah. I think I do have concerns about him being small, like we talked about. However, he's never had a major injury in his career. He's always been healthy, and what he did last year is hard to ignore. Yeah. In the second half, I mean, he lit up the league, and I think, honestly, he's going to do the same thing. And I think he's one of the more safe bets in the first round. And I'm really not just saying that, but like,
I don't disagree with you.
The way they use him too, and they figured it out. Ron Rivera, the head coach, has said that too. He said it kind of like flipped the switch, and they're gonna use him the same way in 2019. He is their best weapon on that team, and what you said about like the Cam Newton, if he gets hurt again, I think that'd be fine too, because when Cam Newton was hurt, he was actually doing just as well, if not better.
I mean, I think for me, on my personal running back,
I don't know
rankings,
if I take him 3, but like
I know what you're saying. As I compile my information to create my running back rankings, right now I do have Christian McCaffrey at 6 or 7. And it's just because I see, like, if you were to go through, the top 5 or 6 running backs, right?
Yeah, so you have like Melvin Gordon.
I would have Melvin Gordon ahead of him, Todd Gurley ahead of him, Saquon Barkley ahead of him, Alvin Kamara ahead of him, Ezekiel Elliott ahead of him, and I think that's about it. So I would definitely have him 6. But that's my thing with McCaffrey, is that if you're taking him over Kamara, who was, and we'll talk about him next, but who was insane last year in the 4 games without Mark Ingram, and you're going to take him over Ezekiel Elliott, who is Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, like that to me he is the 6th best running back on the board, and if you take him any higher, that could burn you.
In half PPR, if you play in full PPR, it's even better. McCaffrey had 101 catches.
Full
last
PPR
year.
Is rejoice.
101 catches. I think he had more, actually. I'm not sure if that was the right. It was over 100. Yeah, like, he is good, dude. And you were saying like over Elliott. He had 40 more fantasy points than Elliott. That's a decent.
If everyone is off the board that I just mentioned, Christian McCaffrey, I will take it 6.
Okay.
But otherwise, I can't.
I actually fully don't. You have him 6. I have him, I think right now it's early. I haven't really done it yet, but initially I'd have him 5th, so I'd have him ahead of Gordon.
Yeah.
But you're not entirely wrong. 3 might be a little high, but I know if you're taking Christian McCaffrey in this year's draft, I think he is one of the he's very consistent.
Yeah.
And he's a sure thing that will get you, even if he struggles.
Yeah.
Like he's a little less than you expected. Like, for example, last year in the first half of the season, he was still getting you 10, 11 points. Like, he's very, very consistent of a player.
Oh, so. yeah, 100%. He's consistent. I mean, there were times when my concern is that he does go, like I said, on that run of not being able to score touchdowns for some strange reason. And that happens again where he ends as the number 7 most consistent running back. So, I mean, I'm drafting Christian McCaffrey. I do look at him. He has basically no question marks. He has no
It's kind of
nothing surrounding. He'll finish in the top 5 next year. Yeah. But I look at him and I don't see I have guys ahead of him that I'd rather take. So let's move on to Alvin Kamara. 313.7 fantasy points, consistency rank of 6, so 1 ahead of Christian McCaffrey. He averaged 20.9 points per game, and he busted 20% of his games. Alvin Kamara is...
Everybody.
He's a freaking machine.
Hop on the train.
Mark Ingram is gone. Latavius Murray's not stealing snaps. And Alvin Kamara is going to be... You remember the guy in week 1 who had 30 fantasy points, and the guy in week 4 who had 38, and the guy in week 2 who had 25? Well, that's going to be the guy that you're going to get all season long. So... Alvin Kamara could finish as the number 1 running back next year.
I was thinking the exact same thing in my head.
I like Alvin Kamara, and where you're getting him is at 4 or 5 is great. Like if you're drafting at 4 or 5 and you're nailing down the best running back in fantasy, you're feeling pretty good about yourself.
Oh yeah, if Kamara is there at 5, I think that's an easy no-brainer. You're taking it.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people, Todd Gurley's going backwards. So right now you got Saquon 1, right?
Yeah.
Zeke would be 2.
And then from 3 to 5 is kind of different depending on what you're doing.
But I would definitely think Kamara is going 3 or 4.
I think full PPR, McCaffrey's probably 3.
Yeah, full PPR, McCaffrey's definitely 3.
Kamara might be 4 then in that case.
Yeah.
Or Gurley might still be up there. So, again, it depends.
Yeah.
I know the one that we typically look at, he's currently 3rd. Kamara's 3rd. So, he's a little... But even still, he's kind of like McCaffrey in the sense that I think you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And he's extremely talented. And the fact that Mark Ingram is gone, like you were saying, and he's stepping up in that role. And like we said earlier, I think the Saints are kind of... I know their offense as a whole slowed down last year. In the second half, I think that's partly because of Drew Brees' age.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, is also because of Drew Brees' age, they run the ball a lot more next year with Kamara and maybe even Latavius Murray. But I mean, I
flip that.
I love Kamara, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Kamara doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. I'm definitely... If I have an opportunity to draft Alvin Kamara, I will definitely do it. I don't know if he's going to be there when I thought he was originally. His stock is definitely going up, and I don't know. If you get him, like I said, you could end up with the number 1 guy. I think at worst, he finishes in the top 5, which is where he was this year. So that doesn't.
Again, I think the floor for Kamara is pretty good.
Yeah, the floor is pretty good for Kamara. Let's move on to Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Cowboys running back, 290.7 fantasy points. He ranked 3rd on the consistency rankings, and he had an average of 19.4 points per game. He busted 13% of the time. I have my feelings about my boy,
it's your guy.
Zeke.
Your guy, Zeke.
That's my boy. I love Ezekiel Elliott. He is one of my favorite running backs in the NFL. The fact that he walked into a freaking game against the Los Angeles Rams carrying a bag of Chipotle or Chick-fil-A or whatever it was, I love it. But last year Zeke burned me.
He did.
He finished 5. So that's not bad. And I think in standard leagues he finished 4. So Zeke didn't do bad last year. He just what I expected from him, where I drafted him at 3 or 4.
He finished 5 in standard leagues too.
He finished 5 in standard leagues. Where I drafted him at 4 is not where I I envisioned him to get like these 20-point games on average, and
Kinda
he was
like-
getting kind of like Barkley, but he didn't do that. And so when I say he burned me, he played great. He never destroyed my team, but he was completely consistent on a week-to-week basis. I mean, a consistency rank of 3,
which is awesome.
So Zeke is good. The only problem with Ezekiel Elliott, and I could have seen him leapfrog over Kamara, McCaffery, and maybe even Barkley, had this one thing happened, but the Dallas Cowboys are too brain dead to realize it, is they would give him the ball. They would throw it to him, they would run it with him, they would do everything and get inside the 20-yard line, and then it was like, we don't have Zeke anymore, so we got to throw it to people like, Amari Cooper or Cole Beasley, or we got to run the football with Rod Smith. Like, they completely went away from Ezekiel Elliott.
His
in the
red zone usage was low.
It was bad, and it was like it affected Ezekiel Elliott's touchdown output. When you're in fantasy football, you rely on, especially from running backs and wide receivers, you rely on those touchdowns. And when Zeke wasn't providing the touchdowns, it was hard to watch. I think he had the most yards of all running. I think he was the rushing leader this year. Yet he finished 5th in fantasy points because he didn't have any touchdowns.
And now, is the concern with Elliott going to stay there? Because they're not changing anything. Their head coach is still the same.
Yeah.
Did they realize kind of like what happened in Carolina? Like, we should probably start using Elliott more in the red zone.
Yeah.
Like, you better hope that's the case.
Yeah.
I do like Elliott. I think if you're taking any one of the top 5 or 6 running backs, you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Like, let's start that off. If you're like concerned, like, did I take the right guy?
Oh no!
Like we were talking,
my
like
team's
who
gonna
was number one,
collapse.
right? Like even if you took theoretically the wrong guy there, as long as you take one of those top 6 running backs, I think you're fine. Elliott's really, really good. I think right now he's ranked 2 on a lot of mock drafts and half PPR. I don't know quite right there, but with Elliott, it's again similar to Kamara and McCaffery. The last few guys we've been talking about, you know what you're gonna get. He's going to perform. He's gonna be a top 5 running back most likely again. Mm-hmm. And if they use him in the red zone, he might be top 3 running back.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't, like I said, I don't see any of those questions that you see with the top 2 guys. Once again, McCaffrey sees solidified role. They want to use him in the same way. Kamara, even better role, an even better situation for him. The offseason was good to Kamara, and Ezekiel Elliott. There's no real problems there. Like, he's been good for a couple of years. He's been up and down. He was 5 this year.
Might even be a better situation with Amari Cooper having a full season.
Having a full season, most definitely. So, as far as Zeke, I got to put the blinders on. If Zeke is sitting there and my pick, and I'm like, all right, let's go. I'll draft my boy Zeke again. But I think it's more or less just the touchdowns. If he can get over that and he can score more touchdowns next year, which I think he will. It's the same, you see the same problem with Julio Jones. Julio Jones is a machine when it comes to yards.
Yeah.
Can't get any touchdowns. So I really do like Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's a beast. I think he chews up yards. He's literally a yards machine. If he scores touchdowns, he's going to finish 3. You know what I mean? Top
Definitely.
3. So it should be interesting to see where he lands next year. But let's move on. James Conner, 252 fantasy points. Consistency rank of 9, which
a little worse than what you thought.
A little worse.
30% bust percentages.
Yeah. James Conner is a guy that I looked at this year, and you kind of like, riding the media wave. You're like, oh, this guy's really good. Yeah, let's go. He's one of the best running backs. And then I started looking at some of his numbers. I started looking at the consistency rank, and I started looking at some of his home road splits, and I started looking at his average points per game, and he was good. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't as good as, a man named Le'Veon Bell when he was in Pittsburgh. And the people hyped James Conner up as a top 3 running back and this amazing guy.
Now, granted.
And he wasn't that towards the end of the season.
He did miss 3 games.
Yeah. Yep.
And the fact he still finished 6th.
He would have finished 4th had he played those games.
Right. He would have been probably ahead of Elliott. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if he would have been ahead of Kamara, because Kamara had like 70 points on him, so
yeah,
he would have been right there. I think he definitely would have been ahead of Elliott, though. So he's still top 5.
Yeah.
Like, he was still extremely good. And I know, like, I don't think he's in the same level. Like, I think tier 1 is kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Of, like, those top 6 running backs. I would say it's like Barkley, Gurley, McCaffery, Kamara, Elliott, and Gordon, right? I would say that's kind of like the top 6. That's the top tier. I think James Conner, though, is in that second tier, which is still late first-round material. Right now, he's going high second round.
Yeah.
I still think the value is there for him. If you're taking James Conner, I think he can be a low-end RB1 that you're getting in the second round. High second round, granted, but it's still a good value right there for him. Now, if in your league he's going in with those running backs, right, and he's going in the top 5, top 6, then I think you stay away from him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you have James Conner going 5th off your board, you're
right.
in trouble.
Like, don't
overdo the James Conner. Like, if you have pick, 110, like 1.10,
10th overall.
Yeah, 10th overall in the first round. You would definitely, I would take James Conner there, and maybe even another guy, if you somehow are able to pull that off. But another running back, another top 10 running back. Yeah,
like O'Connor and David Johnson.
If you're able to pull that off. But my concerns with James Conner are this. The offense of the Arizona Cardinals. Woo!
I said David Johnson. It's my fault.
Yeah, dude. The offense of the Pittsburgh Steelers is different. You get Juju as the number 1 wide receiver. You got James Conner as the number 1 back. Their offensive line hasn't changed all that much,
which isn't a bad thing.
But I just don't. James Conner is just this guy who kind of embodies a bust for me. I don't know. I'm putting an asterisk next to him, and I'm saying it's a no-go. For me, I mean, I know you like James Conner, but for me, James Conner is one of those running backs that you may draft in the first round and go, no, why did I waste my draft pick on that? I could have drafted this guy, this guy, or this guy. You don't want, especially with your first round pick. You're building the core in a redraft league. You're building the core of your fantasy team, and you cannot draft a guy like, James Conner, who has, I guess, some question marks surrounding him on whether he can produce the same way he did last year. So let's say you're
sitting 8th overall.
Okay.
You're at the end of the first round.
I can't take a wide receiver.
All those top guys are gone. Everyone's telling you to pick a wide receiver at that spot. You want to take a running back. Are you taking James Conner or are you taking Le'Veon Bell? Because right now Le'Veon Bell is actually ahead of James Conner.
Conner.
Right. Now, do you take James Conner or David Johnson?
I would say David Johnson, but
Really?
I'm not taking David Johnson that high. Like, I would, if I know I have David Johnson, right?
You're taking David Johnson.
I would take
8
if I'm drafting 8
or 13,
and all my running backs are off the board, right? 8th overall. If all my running backs are off the board, I would consider taking a DeAndre Hopkins or a Devontae Adams late in the first round, and then taking the risk of waiting for early in the second and drafting David Johnson. Okay. If that's what ended up happening.
So it's essentially David Johnson. You're essentially saying it.
Yes, yeah. Okay. That would be my strategy.
But still, taking him at number 8 is not a bad play.
It's not a bad play. If you feel the need to draft James Conner and you want to do that, and that's how your draft is working out, then feel free. Mm-hmm. But I feel this sense of, I hate to be indecisive on James Conner, but I feel this bust. Some guys I have this weird sense of like, this guy's going to bust, and then some guys I'm like, this guy's going to be fine, and I could be completely wrong on all
for someone who likes James Conner, my thing is just like, you take those 6 guys definitely ahead of him.
Yeah.
And then after those 6, you can kind of play around with what you want to do. So if you're picking at 7 or 8 and you like James Conner, take him. Take him at that spot.
Definitely.
Just don't take him any earlier than that.
Most definitely. We're gonna conclude the show with our last guy, Melvin Gordon, and continue the funness of this podcast next week.
Part 2,
where we'll talk about players like James White, David Johnson, Kareem Hunt, Derrick Henry, Chris Carson, and the like. But we'll give you a part 2 let's conclude this with Melvin Gordon. 250.5 fantasy points. His consistency rank was number 2.
That is impressive.
He averaged 20.9 points per game. He missed three games, I believe.
Yep,
And if
he missed 4.
He missed 4 games?
4 games.
If you add the average 20 points per game, those 4 games, it would be a total of 80 points. You add 80 points and he would be at 320, which means that he would be the 4th running back in fantasy, maybe even the 3rd running back in fantasy. I love Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is he's a guy that I've coveted in fantasy football for 3 years.
Oh yeah, he's your guy. He's one of your guys.
I haven't been able. He's been a guy that has escaped my
never on your
fantasy
team.
roster,
Yep.
Never on my team. I love Melvin Gordon. When I looked at his numbers 10 weeks into the season this year, and I saw him averaging right around 18, 19, 20. And when I say averaging 20 points per game, I'm not even saying, he was getting, 30, and then he was getting 10.
Like
he was
Tyreek
getting
Hill.
every single week.
Right.
19 points. And when you get that consistency on a night-to-night basis, or on a week-to-week basis, I should say, not night-to-night. I'm thinking basketball.
Or baseball.
Baseball. If you're getting that consistency on a week-to-week basis, Melvin Gordon is 100%. I don't know. I don't understand why this guy falls so far in drafts every single year. And yes, it's because of his injuries.
Right.
But this guy does so much for your fantasy team. And, I mean, if you're anticipating injury and you're like, okay, later in the season he's going to get hurt, then just deal him or something. I don't know. The guy is good enough.
You take that chance.
You take that chance because if this guy plays a full season,
He's
a top
4
3
at
back.
least. Yeah.
He's one of the most, and in a half PPR league or a full PPR, the guy is fully involved in the passing game as well. So Melvin Gordon is he's a guy that I'm targeting this year, and I would love to have on my team.
Yeah.
But hey, if it doesn't happen, I'll have to move forward.
Like I've been saying, I've kind of been going with that trend of the big 6 is what I'm going to call it. Melvin Gordon
the big
fits
6,
in that.
tier 1.
The tier 1 running backs. Yep. And I think I still really love Melvin Gordon. I actually have him as probably ranked 6th though right now of the first tier.
Right.
For the only fact of injuries, because every single year he's played, he misses
got
4
injuries,
games.
yep.
So you do have to keep that in mind. But when he's healthy, he's just as good as Elliott. He's just as good as Kamara. He's just as good as all these other guys we've talked about, if not better sometimes. I mean, he's insane. I mean, I was looking at the numbers. You're right. If he didn't miss those 4 games, he would have finished 3rd.
Yeah.
Easy 3rd, honestly.
Yeah. I targeted him. I targeted him in trades all last year. I think it was every week. I texted the person who had him and was like, I need this guy.
Todd Gurley had an RB finish 78% of the time.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley and McCaffery was 63, which is extremely good. Melvin Gordon had 75% of the time, which is higher than Barkley.
According to the consistency rankings and the RB1 finish percentage, Melvin Gordon was the number 2 running back in fantasy last year.
Yeah.
Not going off fantasy points, but just going off how consistent he was, which consistency in fantasy football
is important.
Listen up and hear this straight, is maybe the most important thing that you have to scout out for a player. Because a guy like Tyreek Hill could burn your team. A guy like James White, who we'll talk about next week, he finished 8, 233 fantasy points. Wahoo. He can burn your fantasy team. Because if you get one of those guys in your team and he has a 5-point week or a 2-point week or a 3-point week, you're going to be sitting there going, I lost this week because my guy who I invested in, who's my RB1, flopped. So when you have a guy like Melvin Gordon every week, or a Todd Gurley or Saquon Barkley or Ezekiel Elliott getting you 15, 20 points per game, that's what you want from your running back 1. Most definitely. So I'm targeting Melvin Gordon, especially when he's a late first rounder. When you have a good fantasy team and you do a draft lottery like our league, you end up in the back of the first round. Yeah, which usually never happens to me.
You get the 4th overall pick 3 straight years.
I'm going for 4 straight years. Sorry, but that concludes our running back edition. That all that glitters. We will have a part 2 next week, where we will talk about running backs. I think it's 8 through 15. and go through the second half of the running backs, and then we'll get you the tight ends. We went a little bit over today. Bookmark this episode. Save it for draft season in a few months, and it will give you an edge in 2019. Be sure to listen next week for the running backs because,
you're going to want to know.
You're going to want to know why James White is not a guy you should be drafting.
And guys like Phillip Lindsay, too. There's some interesting names. The first round is kind of simple. You kind of know what you're going to get.
Yep.
What matters, not saying that doesn't matter.
Yep.
But it really matters to what you're getting in the second, third, and fourth round with running backs.
Oh, yeah. And I think the other thing that just as a quick note, the drop-off of guys between Melvin Gordon and what you see here.
That tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type.
I mean, I would even say tier 1 is like Gurley, Saquon, Kamara, and Elliott, and then tier 2 is Christian McCaffery, Melvin Gordon, and guys like that. And then the tier 3 is like between Melvin Gordon and where James White and Joe Mixon finished, there is like a drop-off.
Yeah.
It is like a cliff, and it's like because James White's going in the 11th round, but you have Joe Mixon, David Johnson, Kareem Hunt. Like, it is just a drop-off from what you expect to get from guys.
Phillip Lindsay,
and when you get to when you get to RB15, you have Chris Carson. You're like, wait a minute, what is happening? So you definitely have to look at some of these trends and understand that drafting running backs early is so key, especially considering the number 1 quarterback off the board, Todd Gurley, and then you have the number 15th running back who finished 15 last year is Chris Carson. And he had 191 fantasy points, which is almost a 100 fantasy point difference. It is a 100 fantasy point difference from number 1. And so it's like, it's so important early in the draft to get these running backs.
It's actually almost 200 fantasy point difference.
That's, See, it's so important early in the draft to acquire running backs in the first 3 rounds. Because if you have 15 running backs going off in the first 3 rounds, you're in the 3rd round talking about getting a guy, 4th round even, getting a guy like Tariq Cohen and Chris Carson and Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry. Like, that's not a good situation for me. So you definitely have to keep an eye out for that. But do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I'm going to do everything in my power to have Barkley and McCaffrey on my team once again with Mahomes as quarterback. Not going to happen this year, though.
Yeah, never. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you follow us and like us. Like I said earlier, make sure you subscribe and leave a review. And see you next week, Fantasy Champions.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.